medically understood.
Hey there, folks. Mark Edwards here, and this is the Ultraviolet Podcast. And today I am joined by DJ Muel. DJ is a Twitch streamer, and he runs his own Twitch channel, which is based and awesome. And he is also a regular participant on Red Planet TV, which is a panel discussion on Bad Bunny's stream with a bunch of other really dope people that we'll talk to and who are linked in the down there part. About how to actually materially build a leftist future. And I was really excited to get him on the show. We have an amazing conversation. It was really fun. I love this conversation. We talk about a whole bunch of shit. We talk about debate bros and debate streams and like Twitch politics and why all of that is just cringe, shitty, and why it's ultimately not productive, and why DJ and myself and other people in our little corner of the left are doing things the way that we do them, and how that is productive and why it's ultimately going to win. We talk about the future of the online left in general, how to combat all of that bullshit and kill the doomer pill in all of our souls that makes us think that we can't actually affect a meaningful change in the world. It was just a fantastic conversation. So really excited to get this to you. Couple of content warnings, because we do talk about a lot of really shitty people, and we talk about a lot of really shitty stuff. We hit all the big ones: racism, sexism, transphobia. We also briefly talk about self-harm. So all of that's in there. If any of that is going to cause you psychic damage, you know the drill. Not going to take it personally if you skip this one. For everybody else, I'm not going to keep you from the convo any longer, and I give you DJ Muel. All right. DJ Muel, thank you so much for joining me, man.
It is a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I've been like creeping on your stream, and I've been checking out your new show that you've got with all these other cool folks, Red Planet, over on Bad Bunny's Twitch, and I've been wanting to get you on the show for a minute, and I'm glad to finally have you on here.
It's absolutely wonderful to hear that people sort of like lurking in my streams and stuff like that. Yeah, like I've been trying to do a lot of stuff recently about, like, I don't know if you saw me doing the Cuba streams.
I think I missed that.
Right, so I wanted to do like a whole load of information about Cuba and stuff like that, because I think we're gonna
Cuba, yeah. I saw bits of that. Yeah,
we're gonna get into obviously stuff like this, but this is kind of why I wanted to do that. I wanted to educate people on the fact that, like, you know, there are people in countries outside of the imperial core that are doing socialism, and this is very good, and this is why you should have hope, because guess what? They actually have not just a working, but a thriving society and stuff like that. So that was a really good sort of week that we had, where we learned a hell of a lot. I learned some stuff about Cuba that I didn't even know. Like, you know, you hear stuff like, you're in the States, right? Yeah, right. So you're going to hear stuff about Cuba all the time, about how it's like, it's not a democracy, and it's not like, you know, they don't have freedom of the press and stuff like that, and it's really like, you know, hard to live there and stuff. But what we learned about Cuba is that not only do they have a 98% turnout in voting, and that is not because it's mandatory. It's not mandatory to vote in Cuba. It's because of the way that the democracy is set up, basically. So they have these really cool horizontal democratic platforms that are tiered in a way, but it's a bit more complex than to just say that they are similar to our systems. Like, they're similar in a way, but for example, when you go to vote in Cuba, you just take a piece of paper. They give you a blank piece of paper. You just write someone's name down, and that's it. Like, it's illegal to actually pay money to promote political parties in Cuba. So it's absolutely fascinating how much democracy they have over there. And the reason that I wanted to do that, the reason that I wanted to stream about Cuba and teach people about Cuba, is because I think, because this is something we're going to get into, what we want to talk about, white Western leftists in the imperial core get ever so tied up in the aesthetics of leftism, and not just the aesthetics of leftism, but and how when people praise these countries like Vietnam and Cuba and stuff like that for doing socialism, like actually actively doing socialism and communism, apparently it's not good enough for them because there's a state still, and that's not allowed because you know, they're Marxist-Leninists, and that means that they don't like anarchists, which is not true. There's so much to it. So I just wanted to get that out there. Thank you for lurking in my streams, because that means a hell of a lot. A hell of a lot when I'm trying my absolute damnedest to not just like do the same thing that no shade. I love all the leftist Twitch community, apart from Debate Bros, but people do tend to have a fucking thing of like, I am just gonna look at all the bad stuff that's happening today and just comment on how bad it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's that's one of the reasons I like your channel. That's one of the reasons I like Bunny's channel and Dread and Sophie, and well, Sophie's mostly on YouTube, but with Red Planet, so I personally am a recovering goth kid. I live in a tiny little well of doom or black pilled energy. It's like in my soul. I'm not going to get rid of it. It's just a sad little raven in here where a heart used to be. So it's very easy for me to get like doomer pilled, and I strive very public. Like when I'm public, I strive to present optimism and to be optimistic and to be hopeful for the future. And I sometimes struggle with that, but I think that we have a responsibility as people who are putting ourselves out into the world publicly to. It would be very easy to sit and bemoan the failures of the left and bemoan the failures of the world in general, and dwell on that, and I could probably make a lot of money if I did that. but I want the world to be a better place fundamentally, and even if I at times find myself having darker thoughts, I think it's on anybody that has chosen to have a camera pointed at them to try to present a path towards a better world and to be hopeful and optimistic. And I really like that about your content and the other people that you associate with.
Yeah, Red Planet is fundamentally the best thing that I'm part of at the minute. For that reason alone, really. I really have to absolutely say how much work my other colleagues put into it, and I simply turn up and say things.
Got a good deal.
Yeah, I got a real good deal. I'm doing my absolute best. I've had a bit of a rough one this week. I just decided to just have a week off Twitch and stuff like that. So I've just been like focusing on myself kind of thing. But really, really like more than anything, like Sophie from Mars is a great friend of mine. Like I'm so privileged to call her a friend. She's an incredibly inspirational woman. And we stand. I have to say that Sophie was the main reason that I stopped being doom-pilled, really. And it's easy for me to say this, and it's easy for a lot of people to say this, but all that Sophie had to do was essentially say to me, listen, if everything that you are thinking about how bad the world is and how bad everything is going to turn out to be, and it's going to be the end of the world and all this stuff, if all that stuff happens, what is the problem with having a little bit of hope just to get you by, right?
Yeah.
And pointing out as well, it wasn't just that, but also when they pointed out that pessimism is a weapon of capitalism. That really, because I'm a kind of guy that's motivated by spite. I'm motivated by spite. I make a joke on my channel all the time that the main reason I want communism is not because of lifting oppression all over the world. It's actually just because I don't want any more Marvel movies to be made. Because I'm a huge cinema nerd and I love like actual cinema. Anyway, whatever. Marvel movies are valid. I'm not going to get into that. But the point I guess I'm trying to make is that when someone points out to me that the reason I am feeling like shit is because of a system that has made me feel like shit, that makes me mad. It makes me so mad. And like you, I am absolutely a recovering teenage goth. Like that is me. Like I listen to Nine Inch Nails every day. You know it. And and I'm really, really like, but my sort of it was never really doomerism for me in the sense of like when I was a kid. I knew that things were going to get better. I just had like a sort of idea that like one day I'm going to get therapy and deal with all my problems and stuff like that. And I did. And that's great. You know, it's a great privilege to be able to say that. For me, it was anger. For me, it was always anger. It was less like, you know, I literally raged against the machine, like all the fucking machines that were just trying to upset me, whether that was like parents or like, you know, jobs or the idea of independence that's not really independence. I think that was fundamentally the worst thing for me, is that like leaving home. And I was like, this is going to be great. No one's going to be in charge of me ever again. But then it's like, actually, no, the state's in charge of you. The police are in charge of you. Your job's in charge of you. Oh, okay, right. This fucking sucks. So like, yeah, when Sophie pointed out to me that it's capitalism that wants you to be doomer pilled, I was like, no, fuck that. No way. Never. Not happening. And I have steadfastly stood. Is that right? I've stood fast. I've stood fast in my beliefs. I've stood fast. I've stood my ground. I think that makes more sense. I don't need you to cut that. Whatever. When I'm not infallible. I've stood fast in my stance that I'm not going to let the world fucking doom pill me anymore.
Right.
And Red Planet is a great outlet for broadcasting that. Like Bunny has been real nice. Nicole is like so fucking good for letting us basically you know, have her launch from her platform, because she's a big streamer, you know, bigger than me anyway. And so, you know, having this large audience to already like, you know, go from, and then we're bringing in new people all the time. We're getting more and more. The more and more we've done this, Mark, it's crazy. The more and more we've done this, we've got people DMing us all the time about things like, yo, I work in workers' co-ops, or like, yo, I've worked in big pharma, or like, yeah, I've worked here, and I've got all this like experience about like organizing and activism and stuff like that. And it's amazing. It's like we've been waiting for something like this for a long time. On the online left, and I have literally no idea why no one's wanted to do this before. Like, of course, I have an idea. It's capitalism, right? People want to make money, right?
Yeah.
You know? So if, like, for example, you know, just pulling a name out the bag, again, no shade. You could criticize Hassan for multiple things, but like the reason that he's not doing things like telling people to join a union or start mutual aid networks and stuff like that is because he's quite clearly comfortable in his position. Do you know what I mean? Like he's like one of the biggest leftist streamers. He, you know, this, that, and the other. I'm not going to say, oh, he has a house. He's not a proper leftist or anything, but like he's got a comfortable life now, right? Sometimes people, when they get in that comfort zone, they don't want to push it anymore, I guess. And I guess it's down to us on the ground sort of levels to be like, right, let's make something happen. Like that, you know, he's done his bit. Like, you know, don't get me wrong, he's like definitely a force for good, you know. As I said, there's definitely criticisms you could have of him. I've had a huge criticism of him this week, which I won't go into, but that's that. And it's now time for us to sort of do the next part. You know what I mean? Like there's enough people who are doing that kind of content. Yeah. And in Red Planet, it's weird because we did the episode on doomerism last week. Do you remember?
Yeah, no, I was there for like the tail end of that. Actually, that episode was the only one I've actually been able to sit down and like watch. I've caught like clips of the other ones, but that episode in particular is what inspired me to. One of the first bits of content I ever made when I got on YouTube was during the George Floyd protests, and I was working as a paramedic for like a county 911 service, and I was also I don't like to talk a whole lot about like activism I've been into just because I have a public face, but I was going to protests and working as like a street medic too.
Nice.
And I wanted to put some content out there, so like I was like, well, I have this skill set, so I made a bunch of videos for like teaching people how to do CPR, hemorrhage control, clean up tear gas, do basic, just essential street medic first aid stuff. And I had to take those videos down because my admin made it clear that I could not have that content out there while I was working for a 911 service. I no longer work for them, so fuck it. So that video or that stream of killing the doomer pill was like, you know what? I can't remember who said what, but something hit me. I was like, I need to actually do something productive for the left, right? Like, and I think having conversations like this can be productive, but I can do something more productive. And I made the decision I'm going to go back and remake all those videos at a much higher quality and put them out for people in like a playlist. So if you want to be a street medic, you can have I've been a paramedic for 7 years. Like, I know what the fuck I'm doing. I can teach you how to kind of know what the fuck you're doing, and maybe you can help somebody with it. So like, at a minimum, you guys inspired me to do something productive.
Right. And this is like this is why it's so based. This is why I'm Red Planet is the most exciting thing I've been part of in a long time because of stuff like this. So we did that episode on fighting the doom pill, and as you said, it inspired you to go and do this. And you said that in our chat, right? I remember us reading that in the chat. And as soon as we heard that, and as soon as other people heard that, that has made something click in their brains and our brains and gone, great, this is progress. Like, sure, it's just words for now, but like, this is progress. Like, getting people out there to think of these ideas and think about doing this stuff. You know, we have the homework thing every week, and you know, we don't expect everybody to go out and do it. We just kind of want to measure how much of an effect we are having on the people in our audience, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? So of course, if someone's going to come back like the week after we told people to try and get involved with a mutual aid network, you know, of course we're aware that it's not going to be, everybody's not going to come back and say like, oh yeah, you know, I found the local mutual aid network in my city and I'm part of it now and stuff. Like, at the very least, I guess people will know that they have mutual aid networks in their city, right? Or they will have looked at it, and maybe they've not been able, because our homework that week was to say, go out there and find out what they need and see if you could give them it, or like find out if there's any way you can volunteer and help them. And of course, like, that's going to be difficult. For example, like, I'm going to be talking about this later on the show. I know this is going out a bit later than the day that I'm going to be talking about this on Red Planet, but I'm going to talk about this later on Red Planet.
For folks that are listening to this for reference, this is being recorded on January 23rd.
Yeah.
But yeah, feel free to talk.
Yeah, so like I'm I'm going to be talking about how like oh boy, ADHD fucked me up with that one. Can't remember. What was it talking about?
Being productive, online left, Red Planet.
I got it. So basically, I am essentially like trying to get in touch with the mutual aid network in my area, which I talked about on the stream. And I've spoke to the guy. I'm in DMs with him. I spoke to him multiple times. I've said, yo, let's get a date. Let's get a date sorted where we can talk. We can sit down, have coffee. Like, you know, I'm a content creator. I want to like use my means of communication to broadcast what you do. I think it's great. Let's sit down and do that. And the guy's like, yeah, great. Meet me on Friday. Message the guy Thursday. No response, just a real flaky guy. So, you know, like, even me, one of the hosts who's telling people to do this, is having issues with doing his homework. So it's, you know, we're not expecting everybody to kind of come back and do stuff like that. But the long and short of it is that whatever's happening, it's having a real positive effect. It's getting you to do stuff. It's getting me to think more about my content as well. Like, I've been toying with the idea of making videos again on YouTube for a long time. I'm actually a professional videographer now. Nice. I used to just be like a gaming YouTuber, and I just used to have like a webcam and whatever, and then I would set everything up and record it and put it out on YouTube. I just fart it out every day, and it was really uninspired, like Let's Play stuff, you know. But then I used my DSLR to get some work. I was taking pictures at Pride in Manchester, and then I was thinking, like, why don't I just do video as well? I can take pictures, I'll do video for events. And then I learned so much about videography, so much about photography during that time. So now coming back to that, it's like I feel like I've got something really fucking cool to show people in terms of my production value. So, you know, I'm thinking about sort of going back into that And one of the things that I want to do is talk about another thing that we're going to talk about, which is, how sections of the online left really need to sort their act out, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Fuck, man. That's heavy. That subject is, we can get to that because I think we can probably spend the remainder of the show talking about that particular dumpster fire. I want to go back and just mention some things that while you were talking, I was taking some notes. One of the things that you mentioned was counteracting the doomer pill and finding motivation. And I think that it is, like, for you, it was spite. And I think that there's some hesitancy for people to lean into whatever their motivation is if it's a slightly darker form of motivation. Like,
Right.
there's a sort of prejudice against that. I don't have a problem with that at all. If hate is what motivates you and it's hate for the people that are oppressing other people, I don't have a fucking problem with that. Like,
Yeah.
we're not Jedis, right? The Jedis are liberal propaganda.
Oh my God,
if you strike him down, that's one more dead fucking Sith. Go for it.
Yeah.
Like, you will not become just like them. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, whatever is going to get you out in the world motivated to help the people around you and materially change the world, like, fucking lean into it, right? There are people out there for whom their entire motivation is an unqualified, unabiding love for mankind.
Yes.
And there are people out there who really just hate fucking fascists. And at the end of the day, if they both accomplish the same goal, I'm not particularly worried about how they found the courage of their convictions to do the thing. So I really, just find what works for you. Like, for me, I am actually, like, what I like to refer to as, like, an anti-nihilist. I don't think there's any, I'm a hardcore atheist materialist. I don't think there's any meaning to anything other than what we make ourselves.
Right.
The only thing that matters is what I say I think matters in my life. And that's enough for me, right? Like, but that's not enough for some people.
Right.
Some people need something else. And I'm not going to begrudge somebody else who finds their motivation through spite, through Jesus Christ, through Buddha, through just a raw, burning hatred for fascists that turns you into the fucking doom guy. Like, I don't care what it is. Just find it. Look inward. Sit for a minute. Really get to know yourself. What motivates you? Lean into that shit.
Yeah, well, it depends, right? It depends on what the coping mechanisms sort of manifest as, right? Because if you are gonna, for example, my motivation is spite. The worst way that comes out in me is when I get mad that my mates are into NFTs. That's all it is. Like, I just get mad at my friends and, like, maybe shout at them a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But then they come away from that understanding that they're, like, incredibly wrong, because I'm unfortunately so fucking well read on this shit now that it's like I could just destroy them in the fucking marketplace of ideas very easily.
Bury them with facts and logic.
This is it. You know what I mean? There is a price that comes with being based.
Yes.
But the
heavy lies the crown.
Yeah. So, but, like, again, like, that's the thing. It's like, so, like, if you are getting into these situations where you're upsetting your friends to, by how you're acting towards them because of this, then it's like you have to ask yourself, okay, is it my coping mechanisms that are bad, or are they just being big babies about it, right? So, like, for example, I've got a friend who, when he started to realize he was losing he's a very, like, nihilist guy, like a very doomer guy, and it's turned him into, like, a liberal where he's just like, I'm all right, I don't care, right? Do you know what I mean? He's very, like, whatever. And that only really happened because I started to win arguments with him about nihilism and liberalism. Do you know what I mean? So he's like, I don't want to talk about politics and stuff like that. That's, like, I think the worst that's ever happened with my sort of, spite fueled, anger towards the system. It's just kind of like, it's like Michael Brooks says, right? You've got to be ruthless against systems, but kind to people. You've got to know where your anger is going and how that can be perceived. Like I get mad on stream a lot. Like, I don't know, you've probably seen me get like hella mad. Like, people in my chat, like, debating stuff that is incredibly myopic. I will get incensed. I'll be like, especially when we're like talking about something that's very, very important. And I'm like, you are trying to stunlock me into something that is so myopic. It's not even related to what we're on about. And that will make me mad, but not as mad potentially as like, if someone is coming in and being horrific towards like, marginalized community or something, right? That will make me extra mad. It's lucky that that's rare that happens now, but you have to temper it. It's like you know yourself more than anyone, right? Like sometimes people don't, but sometimes you know yourself more than anyone, and you've got to understand that like self-crit is important. I come away from streams every time and I go, have I upset anyone today? Do you know what I mean? Have I, attacked anyone needlessly today? Is someone going to be mad at me? Is someone not going to come back to the stream or whatever because of something I've said? And, I'll talk about it with my peers. I'll talk about it with Sophie. I'll talk about it with, Nicole. I'll talk about it with other people. It's it just depends. You really just have to know that your motivation, because of course, like the people who find these avenues of motivation problematic, they're right, to be concerned for sure. It just depends. For sure. It just depends how they pursue that concern, right? If it gets to an area of like, what do they call it, concern trolling, where it's like it's actually not that big of a deal, but you're making it a huge deal kind of thing, then of course that's a bit problematic. But when it comes to like worrying about that stuff, it's right to worry about it, but you just have to know, like, look, step back, do self-crit. Am I doing what they're saying I'm doing, or am I being fair in what it is? It's almost like nothing's black and white. Crazy, I know, crazy.
It's like rage and spite and those sorts of darker emotions, I think, are similar to like a gun, right? Like, right. Guns have been used to do horrific things. They've also been used to liberate entire civilizations, right?
Exactly.
It is not the thing itself that is inherently good or bad. It is the way in which it is applied to the world around you and to what purpose and how, like the metaphor is going to get away from me here, but like how you have structured your system in order to facilitate a good or bad use of that thing.
Yes. Absolutely. Did you have something else you wanted to ask me about what I was saying before?
No, I think that was it. I just wanted to, I think the motivation thing was good. Now we can talk about how much of a fucking dumpster fire the online left is.
Yeah, my favorite bit, criticizing other leftists. Oh man,
and this is going to come out in like 2 months, and I am firmly confident that this will still be a fucking problem. So this is going to be evergreen. So
right, it will be. This is kind of why I didn't want to like talk about the Hassan thing earlier when I mentioned it, because this is sort of like I don't know. I feel like people get into a rut sometimes with how they are helping the left, right? And I think that when you're an online guy, you either sit there and you go, what are my available outlets for activism? And you think, and because you know the theory, like I'm sure someone like Hassan does, or maybe Vaush, I don't know how much theory Vaush knows, probably not a lot, but like, thinking about things like mutual aid networks, thinking about things like going out and doing protests and stuff, and you either go, yeah, I'll do that, and I'll tell my audience to do that, or you go, nah, I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and convert fascists, because that seems like a thing that you can do online. It's not really been proven. It's like visually, evidential, I guess is the word. Is that the right word? That is not a thing that happens. Even some people who used to have horrific views have said they no longer have those horrific views, but ever so slightly changed those horrific views to be horrible in a different way, right? You know what I mean? It's like, fucking hell. I'm a communist now, but I still hate women. So, right, fucking blows my mind that people think that this is actually a thing that's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the thing that really fucking stressed me about Hassan is that I watched Hassan like nearly every day because it's kind of hard to find a cis white guy, especially a cis het white guy, that is good on the online left. It's actually hard to find one. And Hassan, insofar, you know, I watched him nearly every day for like 2 years or some shit. And then the other day he had that Christian Walker guy on, who is just a horrific right wing. Like, one of the things that I noticed, I Googled this guy because people were going crazy. I was like, who is this guy? I Googled him, and one of the first things that came up on his Twitter feed was pronouns are made up. And I'm just like, why is Hassan having this guy on his stream? And then, you know, he's with Felix from Chapo, and I know Felix from Chapo has like done some bad stuff. I don't exactly know what, but I've been told that he's not exactly a perfect guy. And then, you know, they're trying to convert him, and I'm like, wait, so you're just doing debate bro shit, which is something he has consistently advocated against, for like ever since he last had a fucking debate with Destiny, which was like 3 years ago. And I'm like, this is absurd. So this guy now is doing the thing that everybody else is doing because he thinks he can do it better, you know, and for whatever reason, I don't fucking know. Like, he's not done debates in years. I have no idea why he thought it was a good idea to have someone just come on his show and be incredibly transphobic and then argue for 4 hours as to why he shouldn't be transphobic. It must have been incredibly distressing for what I know he has, which is a lot of trans fans, right? You know? And so I think that, like, obviously Hassan, in doing that, it was a symptom, and it's like one thing that he's done. Like, will he learn from it? I don't know. Again, this is going to be 2 months down the line, but like, you know, I'm certain that the other people who have kind of like probably inspired him, because let's face it, you know, if you're in this space and you see people doing something and you're a leftist, and again, you have this like reluctance to do anything of, you know, meaningfulness, then you're going to be like, okay, well, I'll give that a go. You know what I mean? I don't know what fucking went through his head. Like, maybe it was something to do with Felix, maybe it wasn't. But I guess the argument that I'm making is that when you have the established order of debate bros, these fucking guys who are, you know, I don't know. Do we need to tell how good are your audience with knowing why debate bros are bad?
I've had the conversation about how shitty they are probably several times.
Right,
so, like,
right.
I think if anybody listens to me and follows me, they probably are aware that I have a fairly withering opinion of that community and that style of conversation. You know, like,
so you
debate
got
or whatever.
So you got the, you know, straight away, your audience will probably know, like, you know, debating fascist ideas is a non-starter. Like, these are things that have been debunked. It's like, sometimes in the case of more than 50 years ago. And, you know, obviously there's that. So there's the platforming of fascists. And then there is the seemingly, because they are platforming fascists, the audience that they have, even though they're saying that they're leftist and anti-fascist and stuff like this, their audience is exceedingly fascist apologetic. Like, you know, they make apologies for fascists. They want to like better them or whatever for whatever reason, and that kind of manifests in defending fascism. So, you know, that's obviously why it's, you know, another horrific thing. You got these main sort of reasons as to why debate bros suck. And it's like, we have this established order now where these guys who are doing these horrific things, apparently in the name of leftism, and they are inspiring other people, other cis-het white men, not all the time. Obviously, there's some marginalized people who are debate bros, but yeah, like the continuing sort of machine of making more and more debate bros is it's like a new sort of industry on Twitch. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like on the higher levels of Twitch, you've got like the React meta. On the lower levels, you've got the debate meta, you know, and like debates and drama.
It's like its own little ecosystem that reinforces itself. And
right.
Somebody that I follow that has a lot of really astute observations on that whole community is Ask Vera.
Oh, I know Ask Vera. Yeah.
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 And one of the things that she pointed out once that I thought was really astute was, if you just at a very functional level, like strip ideology away, but just at a material functional level, if you are in the business of debating fascists, like that's your brand to a certain extent, that means that you have to be behind the scenes at least cordial with fascists.
Yeah.
You have to be inviting enough that they feel that they can come on your show and at least talk to you for 10 or 15 minutes before things go off the rails. And then their fans are going to come into your community. And the more and more that you do this, the more and more that there is this blurring of the lines in your community between what you call your lefties and what you call your fascists. And you really can't tell the difference anymore at a certain point. And you actually find yourself participating in this like machine that increases the financial and material reach of the fascists that you're engaging with just by the nature of the thing. The most salient example of this that I saw was I used to like kind of hang out in Vaush's Discord when he did his Tim Pool debate. When he went on Tim Pool's show, Tim Pool made the comments on the video private, and only people that subscribed to Tim Pool could comment. And Vaush's moderators posted a bunch of messages encouraging Vaush's fans to subscribe to Tim Pool's channel so that they could comment and support Vaush. And essentially, it just served, like materially, all that did was grow Tim Pool's brand. And
Right.
the effect that I saw was a number of people who I like on the internet were saying, you know, or it was Charlie Kirk debate. It was, you know, like I used to think Charlie Kirk was like really like, they were talking about why Vaush did it good. And they were saying Charlie Kirk actually seemed kind of like reasonable at the end of this debate. Like Vaush made him more like he was more easy to engage with. And I was like, that's not a good thing.
No.
That's a bad thing, because Charlie Kirk the next day essentially said that the Minutemen should go kill transgender people.
Yeah. He did.
It's like, that man isn't reasonable. That
No.
man is a fucking fascist. It's not good when you sit down and have a polite conversation with him and make him seem like somebody that you could have a reasonable discussion with.
Right. Yeah. That's it. He's doing that thing of like making fascists appealing again. Do you know what I mean? It's like making them out to, you know, of course, like, yeah, all right. Fundamentally, there's going to be someone who says something like, oh, well, of course, fascists are human. Like, but it's not the humanizing. It is again, it's the apologia. It's the making them palatable, making them out to have like that their ideas have credence, you know, because that's the worst thing. When you platform a fascist, you are saying, okay, well, this is worth being debated. This idea is valuable enough to be debated. And in terms of being cozy with fascists, I remember very vividly when I wasn't too sure what the whole debate bro thing was about. I'd never really engaged with him. I used to watch Destiny debate people, but then I moved away from him when he started shitting on left people. And then what was the thing? So someone called Dylan Burns, he's like a kind of prolific debate bro. And I thought that his content was like kind of all right because I'd not seen any of his debates. And I followed him very briefly. And then I tuned into his stream once and he had this guy, and I might be wrong in this guy, but I know that he's at least platformed this guy once. So if I'm not right, I'm not right. But like, I remember very vividly, this guy's name was Big Papa Fascist. Not even hiding it. That's just the guy's name. That's the guy's handle on Twitter, on everything, whatever. And he was just like talking to this guy about like how a debate went and stuff like that. And I was like, why is he talking to this person like a friend? Why is he, you know, and then the guy, this Big Papa Fascist guy, was talking to him like a friend, you know? And I'm like, okay, something is wrong. I spoke to someone who came from the debate bro scene, and they had told me that there is a Discord server It's a huge, big Discord server called the Politics Discord server. It's just called the Twitch Politics Discord server. And I know a couple of people who have been in that Discord server, and they say it is the most fashy fucking place in the entire world. Like if you're trans and they find out you're trans in that server, you're getting slurs. You're getting slurs. You're getting harassment. You're getting all sorts of horrific abuse, right? And this is where they sort of like. It's not like it's not, you know, when I say this, it sounds like, oh, this is the mastermind room. This is where they make all their moves and stuff like that. It's not really like that. It's more sort of like, that's where these people hang out and the drama is like solidified kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? One of the big, sorry,
that's another thing that Ask Vera talks a lot about. And it like, when she put it in this frame, it really gelled for me. She talks a lot about the Kayfabe of the debate brosphere. Are you familiar with that term?
No.
For those that don't know, American professional wrestling, they have this term called Kayfabe. And what that means,
right. I do know. Yeah.
It's what like people who are enemies in the professional wrestling world. You know, they're friends in real life, right? They're acting.
Yeah.
But the Kayfabe is that whenever you are in public, you are in character to the extent that like people have died in order to not break character. They take it so seriously. And the debate brosphere is built on Kayfabe. It's built on we're enemies in public, but we're going to be cordial in our little private Discord server because I need you on my show because you're a named character in this scene. And I need you to come on my show and play this character, and we'll punch each other out and we'll cause drama on Twitter that brings people to our stream. And it's just a fucking show. It's just pageantry.
I want to draw attention again to another incident involving Dylan Burns. And this time you might have seen this on Twitter this week. They had an IRL debate. And one thing that I recognize, I took a clip of this and I tweeted about it. And it didn't get that much traction because, of course, it didn't. Anything to do with debate bros is like, you know, a little bit like people don't really want to engage with it and stuff. And that's understandable. But the long and short of it is that this clip showed Haz and Dylan Burns having a debate about what? I'm not sure. Because again, like sometimes the subject of the debate just doesn't matter to these freaks. They're just like doing exactly what you said. So like I have a bit of a, I'm not sure if Haz is in character or not. I don't know. It's really hard to tell. He did like his little Joker speech. I don't know if anyone knows what I'm talking about, but he like went off the rails and started saying he was going to be like is it Raj Al Ghul?
Ra's al Ghul, yeah.
Ra's al Ghul of LA, and I was like, okay, so you just want to be the bad guy. You know, just absurd, like an absurd thing to say. And he was like losing his mind, and he started saying stuff about like your dad isn't proud of you and stuff like this crazy like projecting shit that clearly is like from his like parents not loving him enough. And it's so fucked. And I'm like, is he in character or is he not? But like they had this debate, like Dylan Burns and Haz. Again, I don't know what the fuck the debate was about, but like this one bit stuck out to me where like they just started having a slagging off match. They were just slagging each other off. He was calling him a fat arse slur, like he was saying that to Dylan Burns, just like straight up, you know, no worries. But Dylan Burns is there, and he's got this smile on his face, and it's not the smile of I'm nervous and someone is attacking me, which is like a very obvious smile because when people do that, you immediately go, something's not right there. He's under attack. He's in danger. Do you know what I mean? And we can pick up on that because that's something that people do. This was more like a smirking, knowing grin. Now, I know I'm getting into sort of like, maybe it could be interpreted in different ways, but when I saw that guy's face do that, it solidified to me that, this is what he wants. He wants this. It's this spectacle. They've arranged this, or he at least knew that you can wind him up to this point. And that's another thing to get into as well, actually, by the way. If Haz isn't, this persona that he is doing, his wrestling persona, then is this a case of like horrific bullying? You know what I mean? To the point where they know this guy has like a rage problem and they are taking advantage of him and they are like putting him in this public spectacle. He's quite clearly very uneducated.
Yeah.
You know, he's quite clearly very uneducated.
Well, I think that's part of why the Twitch politic, like debate sphere, is so toxic, is because unlike professional wrestling, where there actually are these like established, defined categories, and you're playing a character and you're getting paid, that doesn't exist out here in like the Wild West of like internet folks. Like the character that you're playing and who you are as a person, there's a lot of overlap to the point that those distinctions are blurred. And that's why it's so toxic, because you have people being a character of themselves in a way, and it blends, like fake harassment publicly turns into actual harassment in the real world. And it like just the way that they interface with one another is just intensely fucking toxic.
Yeah, well, that is a perfect segue into sort of like some of the worst examples of debate bro drama, is that like our friends are getting harassed to the point where they are having to really seriously consider either coming off Twitter, or you know, it's affected to the point where they're suicidal. It's affecting them to the point where you know, I have had DMs with people who are getting harassed where it's so sad that these people are being made to feel like this. Like there is no reason for them being made to feel like this. And it's always women. It's always women. It's always trans women. It's always women of color. Like, you know, I've spoke with Lua, Professor Flowers, about, you know, her harassment and stuff. I've also, you know, like I said, good friends with Nicole and Sophie. They both get harassment from Debate Bros. One interesting thing that you'll notice about Debate Bros is that they, you know, people will say stuff like this and they'll be like, well, how do you know? Surely they do attack other leftists who aren't trans and stuff like that. Well, actually, you know, these people that we're talking about, they have like mentioned Debate Bros on like Twitter, for example, like in passing, right? They just tweeted the name and their fans have name searched them and then gone, right, this is someone to attack, right? Or the person themselves has said, right, you go, like, you know, it's in the implication, isn't it? When people like quote tweet someone to their followers, like, look at this fucking nerd, I can't believe they're saying this about me, blah, 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 blah. The implication is to be loyal and go and defend your God, right? That's what it is. That's what they want. And so it happens. And I hate this term because it like, I'm queer, I'm bisexual. I know that my queerness is like quite hidden apart from when I talk about it. I wouldn't like to call it straight passing because there's a whole thing about that. But, you know, it's not very obvious that I'm queer. So like to most people, I'm a cishet white guy, right? So I have actually just straight up tagged Vaush in a tweet and had no harassment.
Yeah,
and
same.
The people that have come, I don't know if you've had this as well, but you can tell me. The people who have come from his community to comment on my post have been trying to convert me. No attacks, right? No attacks. But what they do is they go, actually, I think what you need to do is just watch a bit more of Vaush's content.
Yes.
And just, you know, just have a little bit more, like, you might be into it, actually. Like, stuff like that. It is mind-blowingly obvious that they do not like minorities. They don't like marginalized people. Like, it's just fucked beyond belief. Beyond belief.
I've had that experience where I've talked about, particularly when I was talking about when Lua went through all that bullshit.
Yeah.
When recently with Luna Oi. But I've just, like I've said, like, and I want to be very clear here. I actually think that like Vaush derangement syndrome is a real thing. I think that people on Twitter attack Vaush for things that they should not attack him for. And that actually helps Vaush because it allows him to meme, like a big meme in Vaush's community is Vaush bad. Right? So if you are like, Vaush is a pedophile, LOL, Vaush gets to just dismiss all criticism against him as Vaush bad. So you need to have very specific critiques of people, and you need to be able to back those critiques up. And a critique of Vaush and his community is that he disproportionately goes after femme-presenting people and people of color. He
Yeah.
punches down and he punches left, and it's more vicious with those folks. I know because I watched Vaush for a year and a half. I actually used to like his content a lot when he I found Vaush when during the election cycle in my country, because
Right.
there were very few people who were covering the election cycle specifically from a leftist perspective.
Mhm.
And there was a lot of like SOCDEM stuff, but like I think that was at the time when Vaush was presenting himself more as like a hardcore leftist than he is now. And he was actually quite good at that level of like political analysis at an electoral level. Like I think if he just stuck to that, he would actually be somewhat of an asset to the community. If he just
100%.
shut the fuck up about everything else and just talked about electoral politics from a lefty perspective.
Great.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good job, mate.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so I'm very familiar with Vaush's content. I know what the fuck I'm talking about when I say that he punches specifically at femme-presenting people and people of color. And when I point that out, just like you said, I don't get the hate that Lua or Luna Oi or Sophie get. I don't get that at all. What I get is people saying, I think if you watched more of his content, you wouldn't have that opinion. And I don't respond because I could say everything I just said, but that's just getting back and like it's kicking water uphill. I'm not going to do that. I've got shit to do. I'm a grown ass man. But yeah, you're absolutely right. When they come at me, like I am a cishet white dude. I don't get the same shit that other people do because I'm not marked as a free target. The rules of engagement are different for me, and that's fucked up.
Yeah. It's it's so glaringly obvious, and you know that's another thing. It's really important, I think, to have people who know that about Vaush. Like you said, Vaush derangement syndrome. Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of what was it? When you said because like that I subscribed to Vaush probably about the same time that you did. He started blowing up because of the electoral stuff, and like I was like, this guy's got some good takes. And then the more and more I heard about him, I was like, yeah, I don't think, you know what I mean, I really think this guy's for me. And I think that's a big thing to point out as well, because it's like the content that he makes, he still does have some good takes about electoral politics, right? Just about like, generally speaking, like you say, social democracy, right? And so that's a kind of bit of bait to get people in, right? That's a kind of bit of bait to be like, all right, well, if someone is just like a socialist, a communist, even a bit of an anarchist, they can like agree with my takes on social democracy. And in terms of that, then being a platform, because we're talking about young people here, we're talking at like Vaush, a lot of Vaush's audience are incredibly young people. I don't want to be what's the word? I don't want to prejudge people. I don't want to. There's a word for this, but I'm totally fucking it up. But it's like, when you see someone type in your chat and you're like, that's a child. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to like, just prejudge.
Infantilize.
So yeah, infantilize some people. Like, yeah, sure. Some people who watch Vaush might be like 30 or whatever. I mean, yeah, we've seen like cops watching Vaush and stuff like that. Like, all right, sure. But generally speaking, when you see people who are trying to make these arguments, they're like very childish arguments at the least, right? So I think it's safe to say that these people don't have like a level of mental maturity in order to be like grasping these topics, like not really understanding it. It's like they've got that cognitive dissonance, they've got that they've been exposed to a certain amount of information, so it's like, but it's not quite the information that you would get from the mass media and stuff. So they think, okay, no, this is obviously the truth. It's like when you learn about conspiracy theories, right? Like you think like, oh, I'm fucking smart because this is just something that people don't say. But then you look into it more and you go, oh, okay, there's more to this. So they don't have that kind of self-crit when it comes to just taking on information, I don't think. And so regardless as to whether they're a young audience or not, they don't have a level of mental maturity. And what comes with that is that schoolyard bullying mentality, I think. I think it's like a perfect storm, especially like against marginalized people. Because again, like we used to have, right? We used to have, I went viral for doing a little clip about this on Twitter. So I think a lot of people agree with this, but we used to have it's still a thing, the alt-right pipeline, right? The gamer to fascist pipeline, right? If you're a gamer and you're like watching Twitch or something and I don't know, you're struggling, like your life is shit, like you have a shit job, your only release in the world is video games, you're gonna come across eventually, because you have fucking depression, because that's what happens when you live in capitalist society and all you do is play video games as an escape. You develop mental health issues, so you have depression, you have anxiety, you look for answers to that, and you come across people like Jordan Peterson is on the Joe Rogan podcast. You start watching the Joe Rogan podcast, there you meet Gavin McInnes, Charlie Kirk, all these other white supremacists he sat on, and then boom, I don't need to teach your audience to suck eggs regarding that. I'm sure they're well aware of that. And then so we used to have that, we still have that in a way, but I think now what we have is we have the experimental leftist to Nazbol pipeline, right? It's like that kind of thing instead. Yeah. So they're like, beforehand, it was like, why is my life shit? It's not because I play video games and I don't go outside and stuff like that. And, I have a terrible job and I'm not in a union and I'm not getting paid enough. They should be finding the answer to that being capitalism, but it's not. What they're coming to is like, oh, it's marginalized people. They're making my life shit. What we have now is, okay, yeah, capitalism is making my life shit, but marginalized people are making it harder to overthrow capitalism.
Yeah,
so it's
what the real fucking problem is all those tankies.
Right, yeah, those fucking tankies. What's a tanky, mate? Well, it's just someone who, exists outside the imperial core and is doing leftism,
Yeah, I think, and I used to be a little bit on the anti-tanky side of things.
Same.
And I still I am. I think of myself very generally as a libertarian socialist. I'm not a fan of the state in general. I am also I'm not a fan of some of the administrations of some of these countries, and I could talk about those. But also at the end of the day, creating a demon figure of this other that also happens to mesh perfectly with the State Department's agenda is not in my interest as a leftist. Right. I'm not a huge fan of North Korea. I'm also not going to spend a whole lot of my psychic energy shitting on them just because, come on, man, just start a fucking union. Why do you care? Sanctions are bad regardless of who they're targeting. Just get your head out of the because all that is finding a target to rally nationalism around.
Correct.
Right? And that's not what the left is about, right? You can have specific critiques of other people and their government and their agenda, and you can talk about those in a productive way. Well, it's hard to do now because of that shit. Anytime you raise a criticism of some other lefty org, you get to the extent that I'm hesitant to ever do it publicly because I don't want to throw fuel on that fire. But anytime you're doing anything that is helping the State Department's agenda that backs up the U.S. military-industrial complex, you should think very hard about what you're doing. And you should be reflective of that.
But that means, Mark, that you have to actually think. And normally I just let Vaush think for me. So, not going to do that. Sorry. Yeah, absolutely, bro. That, it's super fucked in terms of the nationalism that it perpetuates. I think I feel like I want people to make sure that they know that it's not this isn't a new type of fascism. This is something that's been happening on the left for decades. Do you know what I mean? There have been socialist movements that have been incredibly racist, incredibly transphobic, homophobic, whatever you want to, any fucking hatefulness. It's happened. It's already happened because of course it has. Do you know what I mean? These movements have happened in white Western society, so they're going to happen. It's not a new thing, and that's why I think it's more frustrating for us, because we see these things that are happening, like, just again, and it's fucking depressing, right? It goes back to that doomer shit. It's like, oh my god, just like get it right, come on, like, you know, it's crazy that, like, I did a video on Nazbolism because I didn't really know what being a Nazbol was. I heard the term Nazbol like thrown around a lot. Like, people have said things like to me in the past where like, oh, don't de-radicalize fascists because then you get Nazbols. There's a lot wrong with that statement, but I think I understand what they're getting at, because they're talking about the online debate community, right? So it's like, I did this like deep dive onto like, what is Nazbolism? And I learned a lot about like that guy that knocks around with Caleb Morpin, what's his name, Alexander Dugan or whatever, and how he was part of the Nazbol movement in Russia towards the end of the Soviet Union. And like learning about the whole movement, how it was like, okay, so bear with me on this, because again, like Vaush derangement syndrome. But one of the funniest things that I think about when looking back at that was that they had a lot in common with the debate bro scene, which was that they had people from all ideologies. So they had anarchists in there, they had communists in there, they had socialists in there, social democrats, fascists, conservatives. They just had like the whole mishmash of people in their communities. The main head of it was also, a pedo, basically, like groomed young girls. You know, I'm not saying anything, you know, actually allegedly about Vaush here, by the way, but this is just, you know, obviously this is something that it's been widely known that Vaush has said. He's talked about arguments for the age of consent before. Like, that's definitely a thing that's happened. Not saying he's a pedo, but just saying there's some, you know, there are some kind of like similarities here going on. And it's like, so what's happening is they're just doing Nazbolism again. And it's like, when you look at the actual history of Nazbolism and how it like fractured and like just really went off the rails, it's like, this is something that you're going to do again. Like, okay, maybe they don't know that they're doing it, but, you know, if they had any bones about, like, actually getting to understand leftist theory and leftist history, then they would know that this is what's happening again. But, of course, then we wouldn't be in this situation, obviously. So.
Yeah, and that's particularly tragic with Vaush, because Vaush has spent hours of his, to give credit to him, he has spent hours of his time talking about the what he calls the Nazbol vortex.
Right.
Right. Like he's spoken publicly about how dangerous it is to have nationalist tendencies in a socialist movement because of what happens when you put those two words together. And then he will spend other amounts of his time on his show talking essentially as a mouthpiece for the State Department, right? Where he is forwarding a nationalist agenda while talking about socialism. And like, I don't want to mind read. I don't know what the fuck's going on in that dude's head, but like those two things are incommensurable with one another.
Yeah. It's almost like he's not that good. It's almost like this guy who has built his career on debating is not actually good at forming, like, you know, a critical argument that is based on facts and logic. It does suck. Like, this is the thing. I think that's the thing that I want to say as well, that I want to make sure that people understand, is that like it is tragic. Like, it is absolutely tragic, because as you said, this guy has, you know, had great takes in the past about stuff and just fallen into this very damaging, toxic comfort zone for himself, where you know, and it's one thing. I think it's very convenient of him to talk about Vaush derangement syndrome from the outside, because obviously people have Vaush derangement syndrome from the inside as well, that he is like this messiah, that he is this like, you know, he's bringing the left together and shit, and he's doing really valuable work. Yeah, so in that way, it's absolutely tragic. There was, you know, someone there who had a platform and pissed it away, for what, you know, and for what, for capital, essentially. You know,
just loads of charisma. Like, I mean, the guy is like, he's, and I'm going to say this, usually when I use this word, I mean it negatively. I'm going to use it as a neutral term here. Like Vaush is a highly adept sophist.
Right.
And I think that is something that, like, I'm a bit of I have like a little bit of like a dark spot in the back of my brain that's very much of the realpolitik Machiavellian bent, which is like, look, if we've got a sophist that's that fucking good and they're on our side and they're actually doing what we need to do, I'm hands off, man. Like, go do your fucking thing. Like, go ham, homie. But it just went off the rails. It just went off the rails so hard that it could have been this. He could have been such a fucking asset to us, and that's why it's tragic, because he's just not.
It's like Sam Seder, right? Like, Sam Seder is like the only good debater because he, you know, he doesn't platform like people with horrific opinions on his show. And if they do end up calling in, they all fucking laugh at him and then just like cut him off, right? You know what I mean? It's like, it's that simple. They don't spend like 3 hours of content debating on like whether trans people should exist. They like, you know, Sam Seder will like jump into situations, scenarios like Steven Crowder, for example, when he was like, right, yeah, I'm on this call with Ethan from H3H3. You know, like, you know, possibly the only good debater. Yeah, like, I can fully get that. I can fully get that. I think a lot of people talk about like sophistry now as, you know, it's like a right-wing thing, right? But it is a neutral word. It's not loaded in any way. Like, if you have a sophist that is based as fuck about like protecting trans women, women of color, people of color in general, BIPOC individuals, like, it's, you know, and their movements as well, you know, then fucking great. Like, that's great. But we don't have that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not about to, you know, put myself out there and do something like that. It's kind of like, and again, it depends on the platform, right? Because if you are gonna platform a nationalist, if you're gonna platform a white supremacist or whatever, you know, a transphobe, whatever it is, then, you know, you are using your platform in a bad way. Like, you are, like, especially on Twitch, like, that's what happens with these clout networks and stuff. There's all sorts of nonsense about it. Like, it's crazy. Like, you know, the Lance from the Surfs platforms Lauren Southern once, and now she has a 300 following, or like 300 average viewer following on Twitch, like, next day. It's crazy, right? You know, the way that these people will be like, yeah, sweet, you know, and the debate bros don't really value Lance that much as like a debater. Like, I've heard people say like, Lance sucks at debates, and it's like, how can you suck at something that's a farce? But anyway, like, you will, you know, hear people say stuff, but then like, he's obviously part of the clout network in some way as well. And there's all sorts of weird stuff that they do. Like, one of the people that I knew from the debate bro sphere, like, they like started making accounts to harass themselves with, and like claim that they were getting harassed to get like attention and to like create drama between people, because that's how debate bros operate. They're always like, yeah, this drama is happening, and, you know, they're seeing me as a threat and stuff like that. And it's like, what? Like, what are you talking about? You know, like, this is just something that you've made up. And it's really upsetting the way that it actually gets a lot of people. I've heard stories of people who were in the debate bro sphere, and they've done something as normal as, you know, defend black people, right? Very normal, very cool thing to do. And then they've been ostracized for that. Do you know what I mean? Because they're speaking out against, like, you know, one of the top dogs in their argument that has like ended up being like racist, like a racist argument. And this person has said, I don't think we should be doing this. That person's like clout has just died overnight, you know, and that's like their livelihood, their subs have gone, their bits have gone, their donos have gone. Yeah. It's a whole thing. There's so much to it. And it's, again, I think, like, you know, it's easy to get overwhelmed with this stuff. It's easy when we're talking about this. It's like, oh my God, this is this like horrific underground, you know, Nazbol shit. Like, you know, how are we gonna get away from this? It's chaos. It's chaotic. There's, you know, there's not really one. There's like several heads of the dragon as well. You know what I mean? There's like all these different debate bros that are, you know, quite big in their own way. But I think again we have to come back from this sort of dramatic doomerism, and we have to say, okay, well, there's ways we can do this. You know what I mean? Like one of the biggest things that I remember, and I reminded myself of it recently, is in FD Signifier's video "Breaking Bread," and he talks about how essentially like. A bunch of angry. The main issue with BreadTube is that it's very white, right? Yeah. But a bunch of angry white guys who are angry about fascism. Not just angry white guys, but there's some other, people in there too. You got ContraPoints, you got like fucking, a bunch of people who did like videos on like why Gamergate is bad, why the alt-right is bad, and there was so much done. And then the alt-right kind of like died out when people realized how bunk their arguments were. But there was already something there for them to go into, which was the debate bro sphere, right? And then when that's happened, I think everybody's just forgotten, because it's kind of like it was sort of seen as a good thing, because like you said, the people who were in there were very good to begin with, like had some great takes and stuff. So people were like, it's not that much of a thing. I'm one of those guys. I was like, yeah, this is fine. And I saw people complaining about it, and I was like, I don't understand why. But we have the opportunity to do something about it. If you are a cis white guy who doesn't like debate bros, it's actually very based to make a video and put it on YouTube breaking down why debate bros suck, because that will then start the pipeline of a new anti-alt-right sort of, infrastructure. It's not infrastructure. What would you call it? What you had a word for it before.
Ecosystem?
Yeah, the ecosystem. It will be a new ecosystem of like debunking videos and stuff like that. And I think that that's really important. And they don't have to be specifically in-depth 40-minute long video essays, or even like hour-long video essays or anything like that. They just have to be very like concise and to the point, right? And you can do that if you just have like the basic information about how these people operate, how these folks operate.
Yeah, I think I actually I did that once, right? So I actually went through like a period where, like, when I had a whole bunch of shit happen where I was doing just an audio only podcast, and then I decided to add a YouTube element to it, and then the pandemic hit, and I had this thing where I was working as a paramedic, and all of my research for all of my videos that I did that are all now deleted because I didn't like, I went through this like little political evolution, and I got rid of the stuff that I'm not super comfortable with. But I was doing all my research and writing at work in my downtime between calls. And then the panini happened, and I had no downtime between calls. And so I was like, well, what the fuck am I going to do? So, and I was still kind of a fan of Vaush at the time. And I was like, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could be like one of Vaush's beard oilers, essentially, like Xander Hall or one of these other little pricks. Not in so many words, but that's effectively, what my train of thought was. And I did like 3 or 4 React video streams, and I'm really good at it, but it makes me feel like I want to die. Like I don't like doing that shit.
Sure.
And that was also right around the time that 2 big things happened. One, Vaush went all over the fucking place on No Name, and he called like St. Andrew a fucking like essentially he said he was like apologizing for genocide or some shit.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That. Yep.
And Xander Hall went after Lua. And I reached out to both of them and was like I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do any of this. Like, this makes me feel bad, and it's obviously going in a bad direction. I don't like this community anymore. I'm going to have conversations with people. I'm going to talk to people, like, just have fun, chill. I'm going to vibe. That's what I want to do. And so I reached out to both of them, and Lua was my first interview guest. And I thank them tremendously for that.
That's a great. Yeah, that's a great guest to have. I love Lua.
Right before that, I did a little solo video called, I think I titled it "Forgive and Forget, Can Nazis Change?" And I was like, listen, I used to be an alcoholic, right? And I was a severe drug addict. And I've never been a white supremacist, but I have recovered from being a bad person. Like I did all the horrible shit that people who are alcoholics and drug addicts do.
Yeah.
And one of the things that when you are recovering from being a bad person, you need to understand is that you are not owed forgiveness. You are not owed
Yeah.
absolution. And if you are, you should apologize to people. You should make amends to people, but you need to understand that the reason you're doing that is because it's the right thing to do, not because you're seeking absolution. And that person has every right to not forgive you. And if you are in a community where ostensibly the goal is to make you a better person, and the person that is the focal point and head of that community is telling you that if people don't instantly forgive you because you say you're sorry now, that the person who doesn't forgive you is a shit person and is deserving of victimization, like a POC or a trans person who isn't comfortable hanging out with former Nazis, that person is actually the problem, then the community you're in is a fucking cult and is not actually interested in your rehabilitation.
Correct. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's interesting you say that because it's like, so, you know, I've seen Shoe on Head project this kind of stuff all the time. You know, she says very similar things to what she said when she was, you know, an alt-right person. So it's almost like she's not changed. You know, she recently in critiquing, I use that word very loosely, you know, one of my friends, she said, oh yeah, just say that you hate cis white men a bunch more times and then you'll be the queen of the black people, right? And it's like, really don't get that it's not about like having this status, do you know what I mean, of like like saying queen of the black people. Like, what the fuck is she talking about? Like, that's like all projection on her part. She knows that she doesn't give a fuck. So it's like, I guess, like at the point where it's like, oh, I've changed, but like, you know, I'm not gonna beg for forgiveness, but like it's like the flip side of a good person understanding that they're not owed forgiveness, right? It's like someone demanding forgiveness, but in a really spiteful, shitty way. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's so horrific. And yeah, you see that a lot. Like, you know, marginalized people don't owe you shit, right? And I think that we really have an issue in our society, and I say this all the time with ego. Obviously, like, you know, a lot of people probably say, oh, it's pretty fucking obvious, bro. Like, you know, but like in terms of people extend their egos out to like a lot of stuff, right? Do you know what I mean? So like some people will absolutely lose their shit if you criticize their fave, right? Because their fave is an extension of their ego. It's like, I get my ideology from them. That means that they are me. I am them, etc. Right? We have a kind of habit of doing that as people because fundamentally we are all very similar, and so really we have to make the difference between like you know, wanting solidarity and being egotistical, right? Because we get a lot of I guess what it's like imagined social credits. Right, we get a lot of like imaginary social credits from saying like, I'm a good person now, I'm doing all the right stuff, I'm fucking great, and then the ego comes in and says, if you don't agree with me, you're a piece of shit. So like, you know, it's that last bit. Well, there's a lot wrong with like the rest of it because you can't really be perfect. So it's like, I'm doing all the right stuff. I'm a good person now. It's like, no, you still need to self-crit a bit. But that last bit is the bit where most people fall down a lot, and they're like, you know, if you disagree with me, then fuck you, right? Yeah. It's kind of like the same attitude that people have. You know, when you're talking about libs and electoral politics, it's like, oh, I voted in Biden. I could go back to brunch now. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I got what I want. That's fine. See you later. You know what I mean? I like my white supremacy under the floorboards, not like out talking on the floorboards, you know? Yeah. And yeah, I think it comes from so much stuff. It comes from like celebrity culture in the 90s. It comes from the cult of personality with, you know, electoral politics leading up to the end of the century and stuff, and like neoliberalism is kind of like neoliberal capitalism is like kind of like a way that it gets into your brain, like with the marketing and stuff like that. You are your phone, like you are your handbag, you are the clothes that you wear and shit, right? And that like mind poison is so bad for us. This is like the fundamental root of like a lot of these toxic, energies on the left. Energies? I don't know.
Yeah.
Getting a little
Energi.
dippy right now. Yeah.
I think one of the big problems with that whole social scene, debate scene, is like there's an amount of humility that's required to acknowledge that you fucked up, and like not everybody's going to love you, and et cetera, et cetera. And these are communities that are essentially based around like nodes of clout in a clout network, like you said, and it's entirely based around the almost near infallibility of the person at the center of it, and by extension, the people that follow them. And for one of those individuals to have a level of deep self-reflection to say, I was wrong about this, or not only was I wrong about this, we collectively might be wrong about this, and we need to actually think about this. And there are going to be situations and instances and times where I am not where we're not going to be the best, most important thing in the room, and people might be mad at us for things we've done, and that's okay. We're not owed absolution. We're not perfect. Any of that level of discussion erodes the artifice upon which those communities are based, so they cannot be tolerated. They're antithetical to one another. So like I think at a very fundamental level, that type of content and the people that produce it are not compatible at a fundamental level with the types of things that we want in a community. Like at least not for me. Like I don't think that there's anything there that's worth extracting anymore.
No, it's an abusive relationship really that they have with with their audience kind of thing. It's like, you do what I say, otherwise you're part of the Vaush derangement syndrome people, or you're a racist, you're a an anti-white racist kind of thing. We see that a lot popping up nowadays in their fucking arguments, and it's it really is just like, it is a cult. It is a cult, like without a shadow of a doubt, right? You know what I mean? It's you can't really look at these communities and think that they are at least not a little bit approaching cult status, because you have there's not really much that I can improve on what you said, because it is that. It's like this person at the top is infallible and you do what they say. It's a Jesus syndrome, whatever you want to call it, a Messiah complex. It's really, really fucked. The worst thing I think that's happened to like the online left, for sure, 100%. Like a lot of people talk about like myopic discourse between people who take things too seriously. Like, there are people who are not in Vaush's community who dislike quote unquote tankies in Vietnam and stuff, and these are people who like are basically really sort of invested in the idea of anarchism, and so if there is a social movement or there is this country that's trying to enact change and it's not exactly perfectly anarchist, then they're mad with that. But like, that's nothing. Yeah, that's like nothing. Like, you will see that stuff, and of course, like that can lead into Vaush derangement syndrome being, what do you call it when something is? Oh man, I fucking hate this brain disease. When something is confirmed, right? So it's confirmed, right? When people say things like that, and everyone in Vaush's community is like, "Look, you're not allowed to say anything anymore. These people are crazy, huh?"
Confirmation bias.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, that's it. And so, but again, this is nothing. Like, this is nothing compared to the huge, vast swathes of people who watch Debate Bros and stuff. Because of course, the overlap is not just, it's not just leftists. In fact, if anything, like that might be a minority in their audience. But fascists, conservatives, they love that shit. They fucking love it, you know, and they will hate watch as well. It's like, you know, it's absolutely guaranteed that there are going to be people who are straight up conservatives who watch Vaush and they're like, this guy is a fucking piece of shit. I'm going to hate watch him. I'm going to spam shit in the chat until I get banned. And then when I get banned, I'm going to make a new account, keep calling him the F-slur, you know what I mean? Shit like that.
Mhm.
It's one of those things, right? You know?
Yeah, and it's kind of exhausting, honestly, because I like we should be able to. I actually just had kind of like a semi-epiphany just now. I was going to say, like, we should be able to talk, like, there's, like, these cats are sucking all the oxygen out of the room, and we have to deal with it, right? Like, we have to, like, particularly guys that look like us. I had this bit that I was going to do before this conversation. At some point, I was going to spring on you that we're actually going to have to fight over the title of who gets to be the bald, bearded white guy with a purple aesthetic on the internet, because there can be only one, and we're going to have to fight Highlander style.
All right.
But now I'm like, actually, fuck that. We need to unite. we need to replicate quality conversation on the left where people are having productive discourse that isn't based around annihilating another human being performatively.
Oh, yeah.
And the more people that do that, the better. And if you're using my favorite color and you have an epic beard, I'm all the happier for it. So,
also, if you stole the purple lighting, that would be straight up biphobia, actually. They are the bisexual pride colors, I'll have you know.
That is true.
Anyway, I won't cancel you for that just yet. But
you are. But yeah, keep that ace.
Right. But you are so right, because you know, there's so much value to conversations like this, because not only do they, it's great. I always love, I have some kind of arty-farty spirituality stuff about me. I'm a spiritual person. I do believe in ghosts. We're not going to get into it, but I do believe in them. Right. So don't laugh at me. Right. But basically, I'm very good. You can't use that against me in that I'm not good at thinking about stuff and I'm not a good leftist. So that's just the rules. But I digress. I love it when things sort of come full circle in conversations like this. It kind of proves that what we're talking about is good. It comes back to the doomerism thing, right? The more and more people that have conversations like this on the left is going to make people go, look, that's like two leftists in a room getting on together. Holy shit. Like, there's actually two like online personalities who are in a room together, talking, a virtual room, whatever, talking to each other, being, you know, very specific, being very based, talking about things in an articulate and well-presented manner. Holy shit. We're actually going to do this. Things are going to fucking change. And that is another sort of avenue of like how capitalism weaponizes doomerism against you, right? Because it's like people don't realize that this is what's happening, but these debate bros, we've said, they are in a ecosystem of making money. They have a great job. They've got a great gig. They don't want to give it up. And that is capitalism. That element of capitalism is making you doom pilled. It's almost like the same feeling you get when you see a new type of crypto, right? So you see like, you know what I mean? Like you see NFTs and you're like, oh, psychic damage. And then you see like CryptoLang and you're like, oh, fucking psychic damage. But then it's like, so you see like, I don't know, like Xander Hall and you're like, psychic damage. And then you see like Vaush and you're like, oh, psychic damage. It's that whole thing again. It's like late stage capitalism, like just absolutely pounding your brain into submission. And it is this metaphysical concept. It's not even a thing. It only exists because it's a metaphysical concept, and you can flatten it with facts and logic in any scenario, right? You can absolutely destroy it in the marketplace of ideas so quickly. All it would take is for everybody to just like one day say, we're not doing capitalism anymore, and it will die. And we will still keep living because we have proof that that is like a way that you can live, right? You know?
Yeah.
So in terms of, making more content like this. If you listen to this, I do this with Red Planet all the time. This is why I fucking love Red Planet, because it's leftists have to get this. We were talking about ego before. We
Yeah.
have to get it out of our head that we are competing with each other.
Yes.
Right? We
Yes.
are in a competitive environment, especially on Twitch, the content creating space, sure. But as leftists, we should be shouting each other out all the time. We should be congratulating each other on our content. We should be fucking literally like a circle jerk is bad, right? Only if you don't know it's a circle jerk. Right? If you've met with a couple guys on Grindr and you're like, we should suck each other off, all 5 of us in a circle, and you're loving it and that's great, that's fucking based, right?
Yes. Yeah,
but
absolutely.
If you don't know that that's what's happening, that's a bit like, cringe, right? So, the debate bros are doing that circle jerk thing without knowing that that's what they're doing. And that's why it's cringe. We're going to be the circle of guys sucking each other off because we know that's what we want to do, and, whatever.
Imagine like 5 guys sucking each other off.
Exactly.
That is the future forever. That is the left.
The
luxury
Ouroboros.
gay space communism.
Yeah, that's right. So you gotta have this circle jerk like that. That's something that Sophie said. I can't take credit for that. That's something that Sophie said. That when you know it's a circle jerk, it's fucking cool. And like just giving each other love and compassion and egging each other on to keep going on. That shit is absolutely so important. So again, to anyone listening to this, if you have thought in the back of your head, I really want to make leftist content and I really hate debate bros and I really hate like all the bad things in society, capitalism, racism, queer misia, transphobia, all that stuff. If you hate all that stuff, but you've thought there's already too many people making content like that. No, fuck off. Stop thinking that. Get on it. Start making it. I want you to make it. You have my blessing. Just keep doing it. Copy what we're doing at Red Planet if you want. If you have a bunch of friends that you want to start talking about, because it's all about spreading the message as far and wide as possible. Getting to people who might not normally see this kind of thing. There's not a lot of people on Twitch who are talking about this stuff. There's not a lot of people on YouTube who are talking about this stuff. There's more on YouTube for sure. There's more in like the podcast world as well. You know what I mean? Like you hear a lot of like cool stuff on It Could Happen Here and, Behind the Bastards as well, like every now and then. But you really want to, in terms of how a movement should be sort of manifesting itself, it's that we should have all the things that are happening outside of the means of communication. So we're talking activism, we're talking direct action, we're talking mutual aid, we're talking joining unions, doing strikes, all that stuff, right? And every now and then something pops up in the means of communication where there's like a new show where people are talking about how good things are going and how things are going to change and stuff like that. And it's separate to what these other people who are saying the same thing are saying, but it's all part of the solidarity and it all connects kind of underground together, right? This is another Sophie thing. I get all my ideology from Sophie. Like, I have I guess it doesn't make sense to say I have Sophie derangement syndrome, but like, it's the opposite, right? It's like the one where it's like, I love Sophie, she's infallible. But that's because she actually is right all the time about a lot of stuff. And of course, I would pull her up if there was something she said that I thought was a bit cringe. You know what I mean? It's like we have to be that kind of loving, and I think that's the main thing. It has to come from a place of love and empathy. And I think it's as fundamental as that, right? You know what I mean? Our politics has to come from love and empathy. So in the way that I big up Sophie, I'm doing it because I love them and I care for them, right? And I believe in them, in the same way that I would big up your content because I believe in your content. You know what I mean? I think this is great. And you have to, again, it's similar to what you were saying in like the forgiveness complex that some people have, like I need to be forgiven. It's like, oh well, I can only shout out this person if I'm going to get something from it. We gotta destroy those ideas in our mind. These are things that are bred into us by capitalism. It's one of the biggest crimes against humanity. You know what I mean? That it's turned us against each other in the way that like we have to see how we can profit from our friendships and our camaraderie. It's so horrific. So get that out of your mind, make some fucking content, make some cool left content, and that's it really. I think that's, where we have to take the doomery element of this conversation about debate bros into, because that's an area of barren wilderness, and we have to promote the flowers that will sprout in the oasis of the new.
Yeah. No, that's fucking beautiful. And I think that might be a great place to wrap up is if you are out there and you're wondering if you should get involved and do something, you fucking should. And you should talk about all the people that you love. And you should just send me an email, and like there's a decent chance I'll want to talk to you, because that's a large part of the modus operandi of this channel is just talking to other lefties and promoting their content. Absolutely get out there, make something, expand the what we need on the left is more people talking productively about the left. We need to control the narrative. We need to have a stake in the milieu of public discourse. And the more people that are doing that, the better. And that will be a counterbalance to this corrosive bullshit that we're dealing with now. And I believe in you, and I love you, and I think you can do it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the same.
Yeah. DJ Muel, thank you so much for joining me. Do you want to plug all your pluggables?
Yeah. I'm on Twitch, which is DJ Muel. That's DJ Muel. And I am on Twitter, DJ MUEL_. And I am on YouTube, which is at DJ MU3L. The YouTube content is coming. It might my new video might be out by the time this goes out. I'm not sure. It probably will. I'm starting filming next week as of the 23rd, which is today. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. And thanks so much for having me on, Mark. I really appreciate it. It's been an incredibly good and uplifting conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely loved it. And thank you so much for coming. Everybody, DJ Muel. Hey there, folks. Mark Edwards again. And I just wanted to thank you so much for watching. And just sticking around and listening to me talk about somebody, about things, and the stuff that we do here. If you want to do something productive for the left, like we talked about in the conversation, you can go subscribe to DJ's channel. You can subscribe to Bad Bunny's channel and watch Red Planet TV, Sophie, Conquest, both of them as well. You can give to their Patreons and help them keep the lights on and keep doing what they're doing. And then go join like a mutual aid network, start a union, do all that based shit that we talked about. If you want to support me financially, you can become a monthly donor. Patrons get their names in the up here part. They also get early access to the audio of all of these. If you want to give me a one-time tip, you can do so by Venmo, Coffee, PayPal. All of that and Patreon is at UltravioletPod, and I will be eternally grateful to you and love you forever. If you're not able to support the show financially, that is not a problem for me. I understand completely, but you can still support the show. You can do that by liking and subscribing all my content on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes. Thumbs up, leave a 5-star review, leave a comment. All of that stuff really helps with the interaction with the algorithm. It boosts my numbers. It helps in a very real, material way. So don't underestimate that. Please go out there and do that, and it would be good for the show. If you'd like to follow me on social media, I'm mostly active on Twitter at UltravioletPod. I also have a Facebook and an Instagram. Not really active on those very much anymore, but it's the same @. And on Twitch, occasionally I will play some video games and stream, and that is at UVPod. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you on the next one.